What's up, everyone, and welcome to Clear Talk. So, in this video, we are going to be talking about Gaza. I'm trying to update on Gaza. We're going to talk about the Board of Peace and their claims on conditions in Gaza and the plans for Gaza. And I'm going to talk about more of the realities, or at least the realities that we can find um, when you sift through all the just craziness of reporting. Um, and we're going to talk about things that I found concerning in these plans. So thank you very much for joining me here on Clear Talk. If you are new to the channel, welcome. If you'd like to check out videos from the rest of the channel, please do so. Consider subscribing, like, share, comment. I say this every day, and sometimes I still have trouble. um, to help grow the channel and stuff like that. And if you commenting is huge. Commenting is huge. That's one of the biggest things that can help outside of subscribing. If you are watching and haven't subscribed, then why? um uh if you like to check out videos from other channels, JMDPLAY puzzling there. If you like what you see there, consider the same thing. Subscribe, like, share all of this stuff over there as well to help grow those channels. If you would like to give any kind of support, there's Patreon there. $3 a month. You're supporting the channels that you would like to help grow those channels, help grow Patreon, to help grow JMD Nation, and contribute however you would like. Any contribution or support you give is very much appreciated. I thank you very, very much. And if you are returning, you're freaking amazing. You are amazing. Thank you very much for coming back over and over and over and over again. And I hope if you're coming back, you're actually subscribed and you're commenting and all that good stuff and engaging with the community. That would be amazing. So thank you very much. All right. So what are we talking about here? Okay. For starters, I want to real quick. If you notice, my microphone's a little bit more centered. I have made some slight adjustments to my setup here because I was getting kind of, well, for starters, I bought a new monitor. It's like a gaming monitor for my gaming channel and other stuff like that. And so I did have a 2 monitor setup, one in front of me and one to my left. Now I have a 3 monitor setup. So I have my gaming monitor in the center, and then the 2 monitors that I previously had are to the outside now. So that I can move stuff around a little bit more and have more access to stuff a little bit easier in doing videos and stuff like that. So I had to move my microphone around because it was coming from one side, like from my right side, the way I had to sit it was more to my right. So oftentimes when I was talking more to my right, and I never did like that setup. But now I have it to where it's kind of more. It is still to my right, but I'm able to get more access to it in the center. So hopefully that will help with like centering things up on the screen, whatnot, blah blah blah. Okay. Anyway, so maybe you'll find that because I hated always kind of like having to talk to my right. Anyways, um, that outside. We're talking about Gaza here. All right, we're talking about the peace. We discussed this yesterday in a video about how, we're just looking more and more that we're going to go to war with Iran, and at the same time, we had this annual Board of Peace yesterday, where Trump gave a 45-minute hour speech, talking about all his little accolades that he claims all the damn time, and then we had leaders that have agreed to the Board of Peace and have become members of the Board of Peace. And we had also, I think, a group of members, a group of countries, rather, leaders who were observing the meeting to potentially become members of this Board of Peace. And then we had our members that are a part of the board, like the boards and stuff that are up underneath that are in control of Gaza or supposed to be in control of Gaza, creating the plans in the future for Gaza. And there was in this meeting they had a little slideshow. Each one of them had a little slide they could throw up for different things that they were talking about in their department of quote unquote expertise. And One thing's immediately stood out, and this is in conversation to like humanitarian aid, which has been the biggest issue um, for this whole situation all along, is the concerns for humanitarian aid and whether or not aid was going to be properly gotten in, and to the degree that Israel controls the amount of aid that comes in and what aid is able to come in, and that control has continued to become even more controlled, to the point that now they have practically banned all outside assistance uh, from like nonprofit organizations and stuff, unless they, and we're going to go over that, unless they like register and give all their information for their employees to the Israeli government, and it's just wild. But in these figures that they were posting up, one particular one stood out, and I'm like, what is that actually true? And that was in the slide, in the picture, it showed that before the ceasefire, there was an average of 1,300 and something trucks or something like that. But since the ceasefire, it said post ceasefire. What was the acronym for whatever the ceasefire? Post that 4,200 trucks on average were getting into the strip, and I'm like, that doesn't sound right. What are you talking about? And then if it wasn't, if because of data that we've already seen and heard for months now, where that the amount of trucks were still not, getting to what was the agreed upon amount, and then what's even worse than the fact that picture stated that post the ceasefire, which the ceasefire, remember, was in October. It was like October the 10th or 12th, something like that. So, almost mid-October, that on average 4,200 trucks were being entered into the Gaza Strip. But then the guy that was talking about this stated that his statement was that we have averaged 4,200 consecutively for 13 weeks. Okay. Well, you do the math. And they're claiming like that 65,000 aid trucks have entered the Gaza Strip since the ceasefire to now, which also doesn't add up. But 13 weeks. When you look at the how many weeks? I did the math. From right now to October, when the ceasefire started, is 19 weeks. 13 weeks gets you in the middle of November. So that's an entire month before according to the guy that was on the Board of Peace claim, we were starting to get consecutive 4,200 a week, which when you break that down, the reason why they say 4,200 a week is because 7 days on average would mean 600 trucks a day. Okay, that's what 4,200 in a week is 600 trucks a day. And that was the agreed upon amount of aid that was to get into the strip according to the ceasefire. 600 trucks, that was the agreed upon amount on the ceasefire. That's the reason why they say 4,200. But then when you start looking at reports, we were having reports from AP and multiple other different organizations and stuff that even up into mid-December, that 600 threshold was not being met. That there were fluctuations from week to week, anywhere from 400 and something to 500 or something, but never 600. So all the way up into mid-December, we were not getting 600 trucks a day. Then even from Israel themselves in statements in data that they were putting out, the 4,200 a day trucks didn't actually start until the middle of December, around December 21st, according to data that they were even releasing. So all of this is bullshit. Now, to the degree that an average of 600 has been getting in since December 21st, I have had a hard time actually trying to get anybody or find reports of whether or not that is actually accurate, like week to week. And it probably still fluctuates from week to week, I would imagine. But even so, it's just again, the administration and this board of peace making claims about stuff. This is already off the bat, making claims about stuff that are inaccurate, making claims about stuff that are just lies. That's not how much was getting in. And then on top of that, we've had reports over and over again that in the 600, even 600 trucks a day, it depends on what is the ratio of actual, like, say, food aid and stuff like that versus commercial aid, dealing with like stuff, tents and stuff like that, but also private sector commercial, meaning like food that is getting in on the basis of that it's going into the market to be sold, versus aid that's getting in that's just going to be freely, handed out. And it seemed like even early, I can't state for recently, but early on, a lot of the stuff that was getting in was more actual private sector commercial food, at a time where Palestinians didn't even have the money to be able to pay for the food to begin with. So there was actually the food that would be getting in from like nonprofit organizations and stuff, that would actually just be handed out food. It wouldn't be food that was being charged for. Was minimal. The UN and the was reporting more along the lines of around 150, give or take, on average, trucks allowed in from their organizations, which would be more actual, like, nonprofit organizations that would just be giving out food and resources and stuff. So it when you really break it down and look at it, it's just because even if the claim was 600 trucks a day, it depends on what those trucks are. And then again, the Israel continues to, they have their dual use list that restricts multitudes of items, a list that is way larger than any other country, or with that recognizes dual list items would recognize. And then they claim the COGAT, which is it's a branch of the IDF that actually is giving out all this so-called data of 65,000 aid trucks and the 4,200. They are a part of the IDF. They literally do operations based on the laws and stuff set by the Israeli government for citizen like the social policy, how any kind of aid is given or is processed through the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. So, and as much as the IDF has lied over and over and over again, I don't trust numbers that CGAT says in the first place. So that's that. So anyways, but we have a couple of things here. This is from the Jerusalem Post, which to some degree kind of favors Israel anyways. But Over 65,000 aid trucks have entered Gaza since October ceasefire. This is what their numbers are claiming. Delivered aid, including tents, tarps, humanitarian staff, and the evacuation of Gazans in need of medical treatment, which we will look at that in a minute. The Israeli agency COGAT, coordination of government activities in the territories, reported that over 65,000 trucks entered Gaza since the start of the ceasefire. And even if you break that number down, this is 65,000 trucks since the start of the ceasefire in October. Again, 19 weeks, okay, would be only 3,400 trucks on average, okay? So that doesn't even add up to the 4,200. Of these, more than 14,000 carry shelter equipment and more than 47,000 carried food. Again, but there have been reports of upwards of 70% of the carried food was more private sector commercial food, which Gazans couldn't afford to begin with. Also, since the start of the ceasefire, Gaza has received over 620,000 tents and tarps, seen 64 humanitarian staff rotations, 12 evacuations of Gazans with dual citizenship, totaling 1,526 evacuees, and 13 medical evacuations totaling 1,392 evacuations. And then it goes on to state, CGOT also detailed the humanitarian efforts over the past week, February 1st through the 7th. And that is at 4,200 humanitarian aid trucks entering the Gaza Strip. So the idea is to just say 4,200 is what we're getting in, because that was the part of the ceasefire deal. And Israel just wants to act like, yeah, we're buying by that. We're buying by that. That's what we deal. That's what we agreed to. So yeah, of course, that's how many trucks are getting in. But on top of this, and those claims, in December, Israel turns around and starts to ban international aid groups and put restrictions on their access to the Gaza Strip. So this is from the AP. Israel's decision to revoke license of more than 36 humanitarian organizations this week has aid groups scrambling to grapple with what means for their operations in Gaza and their ability to help tens of thousands of struggling Palestinians. The 37 groups represent some of the most prominent of the more than 100 independent non-governmental organizations working in Gaza alongside United Nations agencies. Those banned include Doctors Without Borders, the Norwegian Refugee Council, Oxfam, and Medical Aid for Palestinians. The groups do everything from providing tents and water to supporting clinics and medical facilities. The overall impact, however, remains unclear. The most immediate impact of the license revocation is that Israel will no longer allow the groups to bring supplies into the Gaza Strip or send international staffers into the territory. Israel says all supported groups have to halt their operations by March the 1st. Some groups have already been barred from bringing in aid. The Norwegian Refugee Council, for example, said it was not allowed to bring in supplies in 10 months, leaving it distributing tents and aid brought in by other groups. Israel says the banned groups make up about only a small portion of the aid operations in Gaza, but aid officials say that they fulfill critical specific functions. In a joint statement Tuesday, the UN and leading NGOs said that organizations that are still licensed by Israel are nowhere near the number required just to meet immediate and basic needs in Gaza. The ban further strains aid operations, even as Gazans over 2 million Palestinians still face a humanitarian crisis more than 12 weeks into a ceasefire. The UN says that although famine has been staved off, more than a quarter of the families still eat only one meal a day, and food prices remain out of reach for many. More than 1 million people need better tents as winter storms lash the territory. Why were their licenses revoked? Earlier this year, Israel introduced strict new registration requirements for aid agencies working in Gaza. Most notably, it required groups to provide the names and personal details of local and international staff, and said it would ban groups for a long list of criticisms of Israel. Okay, it will ban groups that are criticizing Israel. The registration process is overseen by Israel's Minister of Diaspora Affairs and Combating Anti-Semitism, led by a far-right member of the ruling Likud party. So this is all political. Oh, because you don't like us, and when we consider that anti-Semitism, we're not going to allow you to come in and provide aid. It's bro. Israel says the rules aim to prevent Hamas and other militants from infiltrating the group, saying it has something it has said was happening throughout the 2-year war. The UN, which leads the massive aid program in Gaza, and independent groups deny the allegations and Israel's claims of major diversity of the aid supplies by Hamas. Aid organizations say they do not comply in part. They did not comply in part because they feared that handing over staff information could endanger them. More than 500 aid workers have been killed in Gaza during the war, according to the United Nations. And that's, a big concern for them. When Israel has been known to be killing aid workers. We've seen in reports over and over again about them dropping bombs and specifically targeting aid workers. Of course, the aid agencies would not want to release personal information about their employees for then Israel to just target those employees. They were already targeting them without knowing their information, and then you want us to give them information so that you can specifically target them? So yes, that is happening. But then we have this group, Gisha, I found. They are a Israeli nonprofit humanitarian organization made up of Arabs and Jews alike that do not agree with the Israeli administration and how they have enacted policies along the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, and they provide humanitarian needs through, like I said, voluntary or nonprofit arenas, and also like they work on the legal aspect as well, trying to push through the courts and stuff, trying to force Israel to comply to the different rules and stuff that they so-called are supposed, or agreements, even when they don't. And one thing I wanted to point out here is, even after the Rafah crossing was opened, which was just recently, on January 30th, it says that Israeli forces destroyed the Palestinian side of the crossing in their grand invasion of Rafah in May 2024, and the crossing remained closed since, other than a brief period operating in the following January 25 ceasefire agreement. From February 1st to March 18th, the crossing became operating for exit and entry in both directions according to the following restrictions. According to the report, the crossing is meant to allow up to 50 patients with up to 2 companions each, for a total of 150 people to exit per day. 50 people are meant to be able to return each day. In practice, though, the numbers are far lower. So 50 patients with up to 2 companions each, which would be 150 people, all right, that could exit, and then 50 people are able to return. I don't know if this is 50 patients or just 50 people in general, So that's a little not sure there. But in practice, these are far lower between February 2nd and 9th. That's 7 days. 7 days. A total of 225 have exited Gaza to Egypt and 172 returned. So even of the, crossing agreement or to opening the crossing and what they claim that they were going to allow, they are not even meeting those requirements. There are lots of people that even trying to get medical attention, they've got to go through this rigorous uh, uh, regulations or like agree or like it's they're just Israel's making it really hard in deciding who is allowed to remove to go get treatment and who is not allowed to go get treatment. Um, and They go on to report about individual instances of stuff, the obscurities of or obstructions of the humanitarian response, not allowing certain things in, bottlenecking stuff. It's a really interesting report here. You could go and find it at geisha.org. But it is all these things that the administration from the U.S. claims and allowing the CGAT and Israel to claim is just not actually accurate whatsoever. The number of aid that they claim that is getting in is not getting in. The restrictions that Israel still puts on that aid. And then on top of that, we know of all the other issues where Israel is still continuing to kill people. There's not really a ceasefire. The UC Sweet Fire situation that continues to go on. So yeah, that for me was a huge thing that I immediately saw in this Board of Peace. That oh, wait a minute, what are you talking about? This aid that is getting in, that doesn't make any sense from what I've heard and seen. So and then the other concerning thing that I found was as they started to talk about the security of the strip. The commander that's over this, Commander Major General Jasper Jeffers, he gets on there and starts talking about the Gaza stabilization force, which is a force that they are planning to consist of upwards of 20,000 soldiers from multiple countries. I think 5 of which so far has agreed to send soldiers. The largest of which so far has been Indonesia. They have agreed to send 8,000 soldiers. And that's the reason why they have been given even commanding operations for this stabilization force. But on top of that, if that isn't concerning enough, they are saying that the idea here is that this stabilization force is then going to aid in training along with Egypt and Jordan at this point that has agreed to help train 12,000 police officers for long term. Like the stabilization force is supposed to be temporary. To what degree that means, I don't know. But then they're supposed to train upwards of 12,000 police officers, which then was also claimed that as of yesterday at the Board of Peace meeting, they had already submitted like invitations or applications rather for those who wanted to volunteer to become a part of this police force, and they had upwards of around 2,000 people already apply. And this police force is supposed to be citizens of Gaza that meet a certain criteria, meaning that they do not have any kind of legal, criminal history or any ties to Hamas, which is interesting to me because, according to Israel, everybody in the Gaza Strip has ties to Hamas. So I don't know under these types of rules that anyone from Gaza would be accepted, especially upwards of 12,000 people. Hamas themselves tried to commit around 10,000 of their police forces to this, to become a part of this um, uh, office force, but that has pretty much been denied or like shut down by Israel, along with even Egypt has made the claim that they would not accept any, or they would not train rather anybody that was connected or attached to Hamas. Um, so that to me is interesting. And what's interesting to me and what immediately jumped out to me was 12,000 officers. Like, how does that equate um, to uh, what's on average? You know what we normally see when it comes to a population, because the claim is that, oh, that was the other thing, was that on this board of peace they were claiming that there was still 2.1 million people in Gaza, because the official report is now that this the upwards of 70,000 people have died. That's the official report of this war is only 70,000 people, which would equate more around the 2.1 million people. But yet, for months now, Trump and even Netanyahu have made claims of figures that have varied from month to month and have actually decreased even month to month, where at one point it was like 1.8 million people, 1.7. I think the last time I heard it was like 1.4. And it's like, wait a minute, are you revealing how many people are actually in the Gaza Strip? How many people have actually, because we've had reports upwards, like estimations upwards of 400,000 people are more likely dead in the Gaza Strip. And from those figures, it would be even higher, 500, 600,000 people that have died, because there's an untold number of people under the rubble, which they are just now starting to work through in finding bodies to try to identify, though a lot of which you can't identify. There are mass graves that Israel, buried thousands upon thousands of Gazans in that were not identified. There was even, and then we have the reports where people, because of certain bombs that were dropped, where people were literally incinerated to the point that there was no evidence left of them to identify, like immediately evaporated, basically. And there's an untold amount of people that were done that way. But I put in 2 million people. And on average, what would be the average requirement for 2 million people as far as a police force? Okay? And it come out that, say, okay, our cities in the US domestically, in a what is thought to be a civilized country, for 2 million people, it would average somewhere between I think it was 3,000 and upwards of maybe 6,000. But it's usually around 3 to 4,000 people officers would be um, ideal for a population of 2 million people. But even when I put in the figures for and did a search for like how many officers would be in a unstable environment or a war, post-war conditions like Gaza, what would be the ideal in in the past, what would be the ideal number by experts or whatever. And when doing that, for the conditions in which Gaza are in, with 2 million people post-war, and the instability of the population with gangs and whatnot, the history there, whatever, it said that the average would be somewhere between 6 and 9,000. The highest number, upwards of 9,000, that would be suggested requirement of officers. And here we have them trying to go at 12,000 officers, which to me continues to support the idea that this is going to be a police state, a security, AI security, heavily policed state. When you have an exceeding amount of officers in ratio to a particular population. Which to me is brings up concerns for this population, for these people, along with the other concerns that I've already brought up when it comes to the housing situation that is looking more like camps than it is actual like respectful housing, especially when you get to the idea of there's going to be a section of Gaza that's going to be controlled and under a particular rule and system that Israel agrees to, and if only Palestinians that will be able to live there is ones that agree to live under this particular rule and citizenship requirements, and if you do not, then you'll be held to another position of the Gaza Strip that will be more on self controlled, outside of the rule of the Gazan government that will be established, and be more like a concentration camp like situation. And that to me is extremely concerning. We've already talked about that. It says here, this is from the Israel Times. Right now, Jasper thanks Indonesia, Morocco, Kazakhstan, Kosovo, and Albania for contributing troops, and Egypt and Jordan for agreeing to train Palestinian police. Police. The ISF, which is the is the troops that, and they're supposed to have they showed a separation of the Gaza Strip, separated into 6 parts, and each section was going to have its own brigade of military installation, or police installation, I guess you could say. The ISF commander adds that Indonesia has agreed to fill the position of duty commander because this contributed the largest number of soldiers, 8,000. So, yeah. And to end this segment out here, I'm gonna try to be quick. There are new reports now. When we're talking about, when we're going back to identifying how many people have died in this genocide. There are new reports now where Gaza death toll exceeds 75,000 as independent data verify loss. Peer-reviewed study revealed, and you'll see the 75,000s actually just within the first few months of the enclave. Peer-reviewed studies reveal official counts represent a floor while a huge reconstructive crisis looms over the decimated enclave. The true human cost of Israel's genocide war on the Gaza Strip has far exceeded previous official estimates, with independent research published in the world's leading medical journals verifying more than 75,000 violent deaths by early 2025. The findings emerging from a landmark series of scientific papers suggest that administrative records from the Gaza Ministry of Health represent a conservative floor rather than an overcount and provide a rigorous bedrock to the scale of Palestinian loss. The Gaza Morality Survey, a population representative household study published in the Lancet Global Health, estimated 75,200 violent deaths between October 7th and January 5th of 2025. I'm sorry, not with the first few months, the first year. 75,200 violent deaths. This figure represents approximately 2.4% of the Gaza's pre-conflict 2.2 million population and sits 34.7% higher than the 49,000 violent deaths reported by the Ministry of Health for that same period. So this, in that period, and that was the concern all along, was that the Ministry of Health was only able, the numbers were always considered low by most to be considered low because the operations and processes in which the Ministry of Health would even be able to make the counts accurate as they could is that they have, and these are counts released by people that they could officially identify. And for them to even be able to officially identify, those resources had to be able to actually go around to identify. And Israel has such a control on the Gaza Strip that those processes for them to even be able to go verify were being restricted, on top of the fact that the many of the people, like again, that were dying could not even be verified. Or, the number, again, of people who are under all the rubble, which we know over 80% of the Gaza Strip has been destroyed and under rubble. So if in this period of time from October 7th to January 5th, the Ministry of Health could only identify 49,000, but according to this independent study, they're estimating upwards of 75,000 within this period was a more accurate number. The Gaza Health Ministry estimates that as of February 16th, at least 72,063 people have been killed since the start of the war. This is the Ministry of Health, okay, at the 49. Of those, 603 people have been killed since the declaration of a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. Again, the claim that this is a ceasefire is bullshit. When you still have 603 people die over 3 months during a ceasefire, that is not a ceasefire. It's not. Because Israel has continued to drop bombs. They've continued to specifically strike and kill people over and over and over again. Israel has consistently questioned the minister's figures, but an Israeli army official told journalists in the country in January that the army accepts that about 70,000 people were killed in the Gaza during. Before January, Israel would not accept the figures of the Ministry of Health. They were not accepting them. They were always saying that the Ministry of Health was way over what was actually happening. They made the claims over and over and over again that, it's not what they're claiming. We're not killing that many people. We're only going after Hamas, blah, 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 blah. But amazingly, in this January, an army official came out to officially accept the 70,000 people that the Ministry of Health was reporting at that time, which is amazing. That is telling. That is telling that they are suddenly agreeing that, you know what? Yeah, that figure is right. That figure is right. And why are they doing that? Because they know the figure is actually way the fuck higher. That would be the only reason why they would accept it. When all along they've been claiming that it's not even close to that. That's bullshit. No, 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 no. Then suddenly they come out and go, yeah, that's actually accurate. We'll accept that. We'll accept it. We'll accept it. Despite the higher figure, researchers noted that the demographic composition of casualties, where women, children, and elderly comprise 56.2% of those killed, remains remarkably consistent with the official Palestinian reporting. So, yeah, it shows here um, violent deaths by the estimate, um, deadly strikes 75,200, non-deadly meaning that deaths caused by the collapse of health system or critical infrastructure due to the war. Um, the total 9 deaths is 16,300. The scientific validation of the toll, the GMS, which interviewed 2,000 households representing 9,729 individuals, provides a rigorous empirical foundation for a death toll. The professor of economics at Royal Holloway University of London and the study's lead author found that while the Ministry of Health reports remain reliable, it is inherently conservative due to the collapse of the very infrastructure required to document deaths. This research advances upon findings published by The Lancet in January, which used statistical capture-recapture modeling to estimate 64,260 deaths during the war's first 9 months. While that earlier study relied on probability to flag undercounts, this report shifts the mathematical estimation to empirical verification through the direct household interviews. It extends the timeline through January 2025, confirming a violent toll exceeding of 75,000 and qualifying for the first time the burden of nonviolent access morality. And this is just what they have been able to verify. So basically what they're doing is they're going around and like literally going family to family and identifying according to the family who is no longer with them. And that's one way that they are trying to identify, how many has died. This family had this many people. This family had, and there are records for that. There are records for the amount of people each family had. And when you go around doing reports from family to family, and they're going with this many of our family is dead, this many of our family is dead, this many of our family is dead, and they add all that up. This is the figures that they're coming to, and they have dates when the family goes, well, yes, by this date, this we know we've lost this person, and whatever. They've been able to do this type of independent research so far now, and that I'm sure that this will continue to the point that they can probably at some point, hopefully in the near future, actually be able to identify a more accurate number, as well as how as they continue to do cleanup efforts, be able to actually identify, hopefully, more people. Because again, even 75,000 as of January 25, that still leaves an entire year's worth of bombing, some of which were some of the worst months of bombing, and and some of the worst destruction done was this past year. So if you after a year and you say, okay, a year more of bombing, and even if it's at the same number of people dying, that in itself is over 150,000 people. But again, that doesn't account for also families that literally no longer have anybody. The whole entire families are wiped out. You got to add all that in which may have been added in. I'm not exactly sure, to be honest. But it just continues to underscore that this operation and the narrative from Israel, the narrative from our own administration about the conditions and what the Gaza Strip has undergone since October 7th, 2023. Just isn't accurate. It's lies. It's propaganda. And it's in defense of, again, a clear and blatant genocide of Palestinian people. And this board of peace, and the direction in which they're claiming they're going to restore the Gaza Strip. This is just a playing field for the wealthy, a playing ground for investment. To take a piece of land, make millions off of it, and to those who will not leave, they're either going to be forced under a certain rule and system of governance that basically puts them under slavery, or they will be discarded and be held, more than likely, in concentration camps under horrible humanitarian conditions, more than likely. And so the tragedy just continues. And what's even worse is that we're having countries sign on to this board acting like this is going to be some kind of amazing thing for the Palestinian people. And I just don't see it. But let me know what you think. I know there was a lot to go over. And I hope that, you learn something, or maybe, if you have a different opinion or have heard something differently, express it, show it, let me know. Again, let me know what you think. And let's continue to talk about this, because I think it's important, and I continue to try to hold, at least to an opinion of holding this administration and in Israel and the matter of fact the entire world accountable for what has happened in the past 2.5 years. Yeah, 2.5 years, 3 years. And the fact that we're living in this history that after World War II you would have not thought would have happened. Thank you very much for joining me. Until next time, peace. ClearTalk. I'm out.